stuff. So there we go. Great stuff, guys. Welcome back. It's great to see so many numbers. We're back after lunch, and we've got 2 sessions left for the Experian Virtual Work Experience Day. So Oriane, I'll be your click master. Tell me when you need me to click, and over to you.
Well, I suppose we can go to the next slide. So obviously my name's Oriane. I've already introduced myself earlier at the beginning of this session. So I'm one of the senior talent acquisition partners here in the early careers team. So what that means is I interview and review thousands of CVs. I run every assessment centre at Experian. So if there's ever a person to ask questions to, I am definitely the right woman for today's task. So before we jump into the workshop itself, I'm running through some really, I suppose, basic but fundamental skills that will help you in a recruitment process. We're going to start with a question. So if you can go to the next slide for me, Chris.
Sure.
What I'd like you to do is pop in the chat and let me know, what do you think employers are looking for in students? So it could be 1 or 2 words. It could be grades, communication skills, work experience. Oh gosh, these are coming through thick and fast. So I'm going to read some out. So we've got resilience, determination, dedication, hard work, team skills, engagement, drive, confidence, punctuality, experience, all of the above, attendance, work ethic, willingness to learn, team building, some really amazing things coming through.
EQ, emotional intelligence.
Yeah, good education, qualifications, determination, adaptability, trust. That's a really key one, Abby. I like that. Maturity, skills. We'll give it another 5 seconds.
Not many grades coming through, which is unusual from these situations, which makes me quite pleased, actually. I think we've got a bright bunch. There we go. There comes grades.
Brilliant. So what we're going to do, oh, I have a parcel. That means I'm going to have to go for 2 seconds. Welcome to the world of COVID and being at home.
We'll see you in a couple of minutes, no worries. But yeah, well done there, guys. Ambition, loyalty, critical thinking, both intelligence in terms of qualifications and grades, but also emotional intelligence. I don't want to give away anything, so I'm not going to say it. But there is research out there, which I might come on towards the end, in terms of the 5 main skills that big employers are looking for at the moment, and the top 2. And, you know, it's not necessarily all about your grades, so to speak. It's interesting, actually, 86% of employers don't mind what you're studying, 86%. So, you know, if you're getting that pressure from school or pressure from parents about you have to study this, in some careers you do have to, but in many careers, you know, actually it's all about, you know, you as a person and applying those skills and your interests and your passions. Oriane, what did you get? ASOS.
An ASOS parcel. I'm sure many students have got the same situation, so we're not alone. So has anything come through whilst I've been away, Chris? Has there been any more advancements?
No, we're pretty much there now. Loyalty, ambition. We did have grades come up, but in summary, it was all around the sort of softer and wider skills, maybe rather than just what's on your piece of paper as a CV in terms of grades.
Okay, so if we pop on to the next slide. Now, what I want you to do is just spend 10 or 15 seconds just reviewing this. Have a look at the difference between what students think employers are looking for and what employers are actually looking for. So pop in the chat and let me know, what's the most surprising for you from this information? And we'll just spend 20 seconds or so just looking at that. So what's the most surprising? I love this, some really great points coming through. I'm not going to read them all out because I want people to come to their own conclusion.
I like your style, Oriane. I'm always too quick to read out. I get too excited.
I want everyone to have a chance to reflect on it themselves and make their own judgments. So I found this personally really insightful. because there is a clear disconnect between what students think an employer is looking for versus what an employer is actually looking for. So I'm just going to pull out 2 or 3. So the first one that a lot of people have picked out is actually industry experience. So we're talking about internships, part-time work, whether you've got 10 years experience before applying for this job. So students rank that as the second highest, I suppose, element employers are looking for. Yet employers have ranked it right at the bottom at 11th. If you're sat there wondering, I haven't got that, I don't have a part-time job, I haven't got this experience, it doesn't matter. It's important to try to get those opportunities, but the reality is an apprenticeship, a placement, or even a graduate scheme, it's designed to set you up for success, to give you that experience that you don't originally have. It's really unfair to ask students to come with a wealth of information. That's not the point of a trainee programme. So that one for me really stood out. The other ones is what people have mentioned around problem solving. So that's ranked 7th for students, yet 3rd for employers. You've just gone through that experience. The group exercise you have just done shows your problem solving skills. You can have that on your CV. So as Chris mentioned, after today, I really encourage you to add that onto your CV and explain what you took part in, how you used problem solving skills as part of the group exercise. Now, Ellie, I will come back to your question as well. So whilst we go through the session, please pop any questions in. If Chris, you can make a note of a few of those and then we'll come back to them at the end, that'd be great. So if we go on to the next slide. So I'm going to briefly walk you through a basic recruitment process. Now, every company does slightly differ, but for most large organisations, this is what you will go through. So you will apply online with your CV. You'll go through some online testing. You'll then have some form of small interview. So it could be a telephone interview. It could be a video interview that may be one way, so it may be pre-recorded. And the final stage tends to be an assessment centre. Now, an assessment centre is quite similar to what we're doing today. So you'll have an introduction to the team and the business area. You'll get given a group task that you go away and work on. And you'll also have a face-to-face, or in this digital world, a digital interview. So you've got first-hand experience of what an assessment centre may be like, minus the interview. You've had that introduction of meeting a business, learning about the team. You've also had the experience of completing a group exercise. Now, I could spend all day talking through every single element of this recruitment process, but we haven't got the time for that, sadly. So today I'm going to focus on interviewing. So if you can go on to the next slide for me, Chris. Now I'm going to start with really basic differences. So a telephone interview, quite standard. It means it's over the phone. And it's often with just one person. Normally it's informal. It tends to be at the early stages of an application. And they'll want to know why you've applied, what you're interested in, what your passions are. The online interview is delivered like this. It could be through Zoom. It could be through Microsoft Teams. It could be live, like this event, or it could be pre-recorded. It could be something that you film in your own time and then submit to the company. We then have face-to-face interviews, which tend to be in the office and normally with 2 individuals. So if we can go on to the next slide. Now I've got a question for you. We often get told that first impressions count, that they're really important. What does that actually mean though? So we've looked at the statistics, we've looked at the data, and you'll see on this pie chart there's 3 segments, 55%, 38% and 7%. Now I want you to pop in the chat and let me know, what do you think the 55% represents? So is it what is said, what is heard, or what is seen? Pop in the chat and let me know. Amazing. Oh, seen, said, heard. We've got a good bit of competition here. Keep them coming. It seems like seen and said are the 2 front runners at the moment. Okay. Non-verbal communication is very important. Yes, what you've discussed earlier, we will come back to some of those points. So there will be a Q&A at the end where we can cover some of those. Really interesting. So if I summarize for you, the actual difference between it, you might be shocked to learn that it is actually 55% is what is seen. The way you dress, how you act, how you walk, that confidence when you present yourself in a room. 38% is what is heard. So that's the quality of your voice, your grammar, your confidence when you speak, how you sound as such, what they're hearing from you. Only 7% is what is said. So the actual words that you choose and that you select. So if you can go on to the next slide for me, Chris. So we've now just learned what is seen is clearly quite important for first impressions. But what does that mean when you attend an interview? So I've drawn upon our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man for these images. So there's 3 key differences for an interview. You have casual dress. So that's more probably what you might be wearing today, joggers, t-shirt, hoodie. You've then got smart casual. Now this is a very growing area where a lot of businesses have a smart casual dress code. And I will come on to what that means in just a second. We've then got smart business, which is you kind of suited and booted, client facing, the traditional style. So smart casual, what that actually means is making sure you look very crisp, very clean, but you can still show your personality. I've got I've got an amazing coral blazer that's quite fancy. It's really sharp. And I love wearing it to work because it just shows a bit of that personality of who I am, but it's still quite professional. So if you ever get invited to an interview and they say that the dress code is smart casual, try and remember this image in your mind. Still very clean, still very crisp, very presentable, but you can have relaxed elements. So you'll see Zendaya here in all black, but she's got crisp white trainers. That would be appropriate for smart casual.
Well, yeah, I just wonder, can it be difficult for girls sometimes rather than potentially boys? Because just from your HR experience, if you were to give the advice to, either or.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those situations where for a woman, you can wear a skirt, a dress, trousers. There's so many different elements, but from our side, that gives you more opportunity to find clothes that you feel comfortable in. The biggest factor for me is having an outfit that you feel comfortable and confident in. That's the most critical for an interview. You do not want to be wearing an outfit that makes you feel like a penguin. You're in a pencil skirt that's really tight and you feel restricted and you can't be your natural self. So just a quick image on dress codes, and hopefully that does help you in terms of thinking about what smart casual actually means.
And Jess? Go for it. Jess just said, I was going to say, so when a company doesn't give you a dress code for an interview, do you go with smart casual or smart?
Very good question. In that circumstance, I would ask. There's nothing stopping you from going back to that employer to say, thanks so much for the interview invite. I'm really excited to meet you. Can I just confirm the dress code? Is it smart business or smart casual? Thanks for your time. It shows that you're paying attention, that you notice the details. And once they tell you, you then feel more comfortable attending the interview. There's nothing worse than coming in full business attire and you come to an office where they're in jeans and a t-shirt and you feel like you stick out like a sore thumb. So I would ask the question, Jess. There's no harm in it. So if we can go on to the next slide, Chris. So we've got another quick question. So what do you think some of the differences are between an online or a face-to-face interview? You're experiencing this at home. You're obviously in a classroom environment that's gone virtual. So what are some of the differences if you're thinking about online versus face-to-face in an interview context? Ellie, lack body language. That's good. You can only see the top half. You can't see my legs right now. You have no idea how tall I am, how I walk. So that's a really good point. Beth, distractions. My ASOS parcel sitting right next to me, prime example. Paula, environment is different. You may feel more comfortable at home. Rowan, face-to-face is more real, can show more about the person. Charlie, less personal. Technical issues, harder to present yourself. Ollie, you could use notes that you've stuck up on the wall. Interesting. Miscommunication. Nice point there, Beth. Zacharias will not be able to see the whole outfit. I know, if I was wearing a fantastic dress that had colourful pleats and dots on the bottom, you wouldn't be able to see it.
And that does go back into what, like you said, comfortable and confident, because news readers that I know, we interviewed someone from Sky News, and she said that she does things in trainers and that, you know, whatever she's comfortable, as long as she's looking presentable, top half.
Yeah, that's true. If nobody can see the bottom half, it's a question on what do you feel comfortable in. We'll give it another 5 seconds, let a few more answers come through. We've got confidence, distractions, people act differently online and in person, harder to get to know someone. Some really great points coming through here. So if we could go on to the next slide, Chris.
Yeah.
So I'm going to run you through some basic prep for an online interview, for a face-to-face interview, and we're also going to cover some top tips. Now, for an online interview, you spoke about the key difference. You're at home, you're in your natural environment, but that also means you've got to be aware of this surrounding around you. So what does your background show? Have you got clothes dumped in a corner that make you look messy and disorganized? Have you got enough light on your face? Can they actually see you visibly, or have you got a lot of shadows? Are you in an outfit that you're confident in, that you feel comfortable in? What are they seeing? Also, smiling. It's a very simple thing, but we forget when we're on video, actually, people can see your face. They want to see that enthusiasm come through. So that's all about what they're seeing. The second point is about what they're hearing. So we know that that is 38% based on statistics. 38% is about what they hear from you. So think about that company research. Think about the role. Do you understand the role? Do you know what you've agreed and signed up to? We also want to use star examples. Now, we are going to cover those in a moment. I will explain what a star example is. The last point is what's said. So this is just 7%, but it is still really important. So you want to make notes of what somebody else is saying, anything you pick up on. You want to be prepared with interview questions. This isn't just about, are they right for you? What are they asking you? What can you ask them? What do you want to know about the company? And the last point is being yourself, being your natural personality, letting that come through. So when we talk about what you say, you want people to hear that uniqueness come through, to understand it. I always introduce and say, hi, my name's Ariane. You've probably not met an Ariane before. I'm a little bit different in that sense. And if there's an icebreaker and somebody asks me, tell me a fun fact about yourself, I always talk about the fact I only like red Leicester cheese. Don't ask me why, I just do. But people remember those tiny snippets, those little gems of information throughout a recruitment process. So don't be afraid to bring your personality into it. The last thing is a technology check. Really simple. If you're having an online interview, does the technology work? Do you know what link you're clicking on? Is it blocked? Can you access it? So that's basic principles for an online interview. Let's flick to the next slide and look at a face-to-face interview. Very, very similar. Now, a difference with face-to-face is you tend to be driving to the interview. You tend to be, commuting, whether you get the bus or get the train or driving. So you need to be clear on where you're heading, what the directions are, where the office is, how you access it. Every other rule still applies. Your outfit, your body language, the research on the company. So the difference between the two is purely, one is digital. You have to think about your background, your surroundings, the technology. A face-to-face interview, you have to think about where are you going, how are you going to get there, and what does your body language look like, your entire body, not just smiling, the wider picture. The rest of the fundamentals are the same. It's still an interview. You still want to show them that you've got amazing value to bring, that you're interested in the role, and that you're here because you want to be here. So if we can go on to the next slide, Chris. Now, before I start explaining, I want to see how many of you know what is the STAR interview technique. Take a random guess. What do you think the STAR interview technique is? I like how you're smiling as well, Chris, because I imagine you're used to preaching this in Pathway CTM content.
I wonder if anyone can get all of them. Sit up straight with hands clasped on desk. How you talk about past experiences, interesting. Are we going to get situation, task, action, result?
It's coming through. This is where everyone frantically goes on Google. What is a STAR interview technique?
And actually, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Using Google for assessments, but I suppose you probably wouldn't have the time to do that if you're in a one-to-one interview, would you? But it's an interesting point.
You can tell straight away. Jess, really appreciate the honesty. Couldn't even guess. That's nice to hear. That's nice to see someone not afraid to say, I actually don't know the answer. That's perfectly fine. Maybe STAR stands for something. We're getting along the right lines. Okay, 5 more seconds and we'll explain what a STAR interview technique is.
ISO is just a structure of how to present yourself in an interview.
Okay, so if we can go on to the next slide then, Chris. So I think Anna was actually the first to get this spot on. It means situation, task, action, and result. Now, what this technique actually, I suppose, helps you with is if somebody asks you a question, it's so normal to be nervous, to panic, for your mind to go blank, and to forget to give more information. I don't want to ask a student a question and they answer yes. Tell me more, please. I want to know more. That's the point of an interview. So the STAR technique really helps you understand more about how you can elaborate some of your experiences. So the situation, what was the context? What were you dealing with? What was the task at hand? What action did you take? Not just what we did as a group, what did you do as an individual? And then the end result, what was the outcome? What did you get from this? So if you can go to the next slide for me, Chris. I've pulled up a really simple example. So a common interview question is, tell me a time where you've worked in a group. You don't have to give a work example. It can be something personal, like this, for example. So I was helping the family organise a birthday party for my dad's 50th. Together, we had to come up with a theme, we had to keep it a surprise, and we had to have enough food and entertainment for 15 guests. I took charge of the decorations. I had a budget of £10 and I had to fit them to source items to fit the golf theme. The outcome was my dad was blown away. People loved the day and the theme, and they all took part in games and activities. So the STAR technique helps you elaborate an experience. So rather than saying, tell me a time where you've worked in a group, and you say, oh, I helped organise a party for my dad's 50th, and that's all you say, the STAR technique breaks it down for you. So it's a really simple thing that you can definitely take away from today that will have a huge impact. So pop in the chat, can anyone think of a time now where you have worked in a group thinking about a STAR technique? So you don't need to write an essay, you don't need to give me loads of information, just a simple yes or no. Can you think of a time where you've worked in a group, and can you think of that STAR example if you were to elaborate it? Jason, 2 hours ago, exactly. The group exercise you've just taken part in, you could explain. So if we use that as an example, you could say, I took part in a virtual work experience day with Experian. That was the situation. The task was, I was given a set of data where we had to analyse the results from COVID around how will we distribute a vaccine, who are the most vulnerable in the community, and how would we roll that out? The action would be, I was placed in a team with 30 people. We had to work together as a group. I suggested ideas to do X, Y, Z, whatever you inputted. The result, at the end, we presented our results to an Experian panel. They were really impressed with the results and gave us positive feedback. And I learned a lot from the experience. I came away more confident in my skills to work in a group, to work with data, and to work with ambiguous data, data where we're missing information, where we don't always know the answer. Perfect example.
Oh yeah, and what I noticed by you saying that, and it's really good to hear, like a good example, you were saying we and I guess it's always important when you're using examples to, if you're interviewing me, I need to tell you what I did in that team. Is that right?
Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with explaining that you worked in a group and what the group were set as a task. So we were set a task to do X, Y, Z, but you have to elaborate on what I got involved in. If they're interviewing you, they want to know about you. They don't want to know about the group. They're not interviewing the group, so it's irrelevant. So make sure that you are focusing on you, making you shine. So get that balance. You can mention we, but the majority should be about I, what I have done, what I got involved in. Yes, Ellie, really good question. So would you use this when writing a UCAS statement instead of just listing things? You could. There is a possibility you could use the STAR technique if it's appropriate. It depends on the university, it depends on the context, but there are tons of information and guidelines out there. And I know that Pathway have loads of resources available as well. So please check those out after this session for more information. Beth, I love your example there, working in a care home to organise an event, keep people entertained, look at staffing levels, who would organise what. Brilliant example. So let's go on to the next slide. So we spoke about questions you would get asked during an interview, but let's think about questions you can ask to the employer. An interview is not a one-way, one-sided experience. It's not about whether you are right for the company. It's also about, is that company right for you? Do you want to work there? Do you like their culture, their people? Do the benefits fit your lifestyle? Is that what you want from your career? So these are just 5 short snippets of questions that are appropriate to ask during an interview for any role. We have also created a little picture infograph that you'll be able to take away at the end of today, and that will be in your digital goodie bag. So don't worry about making note of all of these questions. You will have a PDF document you can take away that has all of this useful information, so you're not going to miss anything.
Oh yeah, can I ask you a quick question on that? Sorry.
Yeah, go for it. No, go for it.
Again, if you were interviewing me and I'm maybe coming for an apprentice role with you, what would you think if you asked me if I had any questions and I didn't have any? What would you be going through your mind?
Personally, I try not to judge, because I do understand that an interview is nerve-wracking and your mind can go blank. You can get to the end of an interview and forget what you want to ask. You might have prepared 20 questions, but at the time you just forgot. So I try not to pass too much judgment.
Maybe that was the wrong question actually. What would you be thinking if I, for example, asked you 3 to 5 different questions, like just as a school leaver, so to speak, not much experience, but loads of interest?
And there's the flip side. So I wouldn't judge someone if they didn't have any questions, if they simply forgot. However, if they did come with a few questions, that would show me the person is prepared, that they've took an interest in not just attending for the sake of it, but they actually want to know more information. They care about, what am I going to get from this opportunity? Or, you know, who's my line manager? Who am I going to be reporting to? Who am I going to work with day to day? So I see that as someone that is interested in a role, that shows that application. I love that, Courtney. Great. So that's the reason I've put this slide deck up for you, because I know it is hard to come up with questions, to create them for an interview. So stick with these 5 guidelines. It will definitely help with any interview you have. So let's go on to the next slide, Chris.
And it's a good point from Courtney there, actually. If I did freeze and I was a bit under pressure, I didn't have any questions. What about if I did follow up on email with some questions? There's no rules against that, are there?
Absolutely not. And I would encourage it. You should never leave an interview wishing that you'd asked something. And if that's the case, pop an email. Hi there, Ariane. Was great to meet you on Thursday. Appreciate during the interview you asked if I had any questions, and I'll be honest, I stayed silent. I was a little nervous. However, I've now thought of things that I wish I'd asked. Here they are. Are you able to respond? Would be great to get your thoughts. There's nothing wrong with following up in a really polite way, to be honest and say, I'm human. My mind went blank, I forgot, but I would love to know this. I am genuinely really interested. It's perfectly okay.
Oh yeah, just one more question that actually came into my head, and I need your experience on this. So some students do say, oh, I've just had a great interview. Should I follow up with them to say thanks for the interview? Now, I know that you'll be trained not to be biased, and you have your own processes to go through. Is it something that you'd recommend to young people? Should they do that? Or is it worth it? Yeah.
Yes. Think about it. If you have 2 people, one sent a follow-up email to thank you for their time and their interest, and for thank you for telling me about experience volunteering or whatever they learned from the day, and you've got a candidate that didn't ask or follow up or question anything, there is a slight difference, because it shows, again, that engagement, that appreciation. It shows a curiosity. So I would always recommend it if you can and if it's appropriate. And it tends to be that you should do it at the final stage of the process. So a final stage interview or a final stage assessment centre. I think that's where it's valuable. If you have a process where you have 3 interviews, do you really want to follow up after all 3? It might look a bit silly or repetitive. So try to save the follow-up for if you make it to that final stage, do it then.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to recap now over some of the key points that we've gathered. So we spoke about what is seen. So you want employers to see that you're organised, to know that you have, I suppose, an outfit that you're comfortable in, that your body language, your smile, everything is showing that you're interested, you're organised, you're engaged, you're ready for the opportunity. What is heard? So you want employers to hear that you are prepared, that you've done your research, that you know about the business, you know about the role, and that you're able to elaborate, that by using the STAR technique, you can give them real life examples that are more than a yes or no answer. So employers want to hear that. They want to hear that elaboration. The final point is what is said. And you want employers to know that you are being truthful, that you're being your natural self, you're being genuine, that you've come prepared with questions because you are interested. You want to show that you care about this organisation, that you'd love to work for them. Also remember to have water right here, a pen and a notebook. So if they do say anything really valuable, you can make a note of that during the interview and remember that information at a later stage. So that's a really quick recap. If we can go on to the next slide, Chris. We've also covered the STAR technique. So if there's one thing that I would love for you to stick in your brain to really memorize, it would be this: situation, task, action, result. Next slide, Chris. And a final reminder to be brave and bold, to go for the opportunity that you don't think you're going to be good for, that you don't think you're going to get. Go for that university that might be out of your league, that you think, will I even get in? What are the chances? This is proof right here that what you think employers are looking for versus what an employer is actually looking for is different. So my one piece of personal advice: be brave. What have you got to lose in the process? Just give it a go. And you might be surprised where you end up from taking that bold leap of faith. Give it a few years, you could be here at Experian. You could be sat here in my role giving students advice. So you never know what's going to happen. So next slide, Chris. So before we jump into the Q&A, I just want to have a quick high level on what did you find most useful from the session? So if you're going to take something away, what's the most useful thing that you've remembered? What are you actually going to pick up from this? A lot of stars. Pretty much everyone. Jason, experience isn't always key, yes. Emma, finding out what employers expect. Daniel, elaborate. Paula, what employers are looking for. Ellie, be brave. Fantastic, thank you. That's really useful for me to know what has stuck with you. So we've got a 5-minute window. I know there's going to be tons of questions. So pop in the chat, ask any question that you would really like to pull out. I'll do my best to cover them as speedy as possible, and we'll try not to answer the same question twice.
Right, I've got a couple lined up for you already, Oriane.
Okay, let's fire them away. We'll be short and sweet.
Right, is it good to ask for feedback to your interviewer if you weren't successful, as well as to show that you care and know what to do next time? Is it good to ask for feedback?
It is. It depends on where in the process. So a lot of organisations, when you have a telephone interview or even a video interview, some companies struggle to give feedback because of the volume. And it's not because they don't want to, it's because the processes don't allow it. If there are thousands of people that want feedback at that stage, how can they realistically do that? It can sometimes be a challenge. If it's at the final stage, if you get to a final stage interview or a final stage assessment centre and you're not successful, you should receive feedback automatically. I know from our side, anyone who is unsuccessful at final stage gets a personal phone call to explain why they were unsuccessful, what they could work on in the future, what we loved about them, and where they could enhance further. So final stage, yes, ask for interview, but be prepared at the earlier stages of the process. You might not always get that just due to volume and process and size.
Thank you. Magdalena's been very honest and brave by saying that they get rejected when they've had very good interviews. How are you supposed to get a job when you always get asked for more experience? Like, that's a really good one.
Wow, what a question. So if that were me, I would be reflecting on what are the types of roles that I am applying for and what am I getting rejected for? So is it because I'm trying to go for a finance role when I have experience in history? am I showing the transferable skills? Am I showing that, the subject I studied in history is quite data focused? It requires attention to detail. So I would first reflect on, what have I applied for? Why have I been unsuccessful? What could I have done better? And self-reflect. That's where I would start for the point one. In terms of point two, how are you supposed to get a job when we're always asked for more experience? I'm going to be quite bold and say I disagree, and I think it's the most stupid thing in our industry, because the point of an apprenticeship program or a placement scheme or a graduate scheme is to give you that experience. So any employer that is expecting you to have experience before you even apply is the wrong type of company. It's favoured. Don't get me wrong. It's good to try and get those experiences. But if you can't, don't worry. Focus on other experiences, like I've organised my dad's birthday party and here's what I took part in and how I added value. So don't worry about the hands-on experience. Worry more about the transferable skills and what you're showing. That would be my advice.
And great advice. Next question. If an interviewer asks you a question, should you be honest or tell them what they want to hear?
Thank you for being bold enough to ask the question. I would say 50-50. You have to be genuine. You have to be authentic, because if you put on a face and you act like somebody else and you get the job, when you join the company, you're then living a lie. You might not fit that organization. So definitely be honest, but you also need to be professional. So you don't want to be answering a question saying, yeah, mate, I did this and I did this and I did that. And, oh, that person was annoying me in a group. They were all right. I'm not going to use a bad word, shall we say. I'll keep my language PG. So you need to be honest, but you also need to shape your answer so that it is professional, it is appropriate, and it does answer what they want to hear. So you're not quoting a Wikipedia page for the sake of it, but you are being honest about, this is why I want to apply, this is what I'm interested in.
Great. I'll get a couple more in, some great ones. Kirsty, if an interviewer asks you a question that may show your weaknesses, do you be honest and tell them that you may struggle with things, but you're working on it? Or do you tell them what they want to hear and what they want to expect? I think what she said there, she's got the answer in the question, hasn't she?
Yeah, definitely. So there's nothing wrong with admitting you have a weakness. Nobody is perfect. We all have things that we're not as great at. Mine is numbers. If you play darts with me and you have to calculate numbers off a board, you'll be there for hours with me, because it's not my natural strength, but it doesn't mean I can't do it. So you are definitely right, Kirsty, that if somebody asks about a weakness, you can say, I'm not as comfortable working with data or working with numerical information. However, I've taken part in this virtual work experience where we were required to do that as a group because I wanted to try and enhance my skills in that area. So that's how I would combat it. Say it's not a strength, you're not as comfortable, but end it on a positive.
No, exactly right. And you nailed it there, by the way. Well done for knowing that. I'm just going to go to one more from Tegan saying, I went to an interview and I was so nervous, but I just stayed confident and answered the questions honestly, and I got the job. Isn't that kind of a little bit fake it till you make it, which I think we all do, don't we, Oriane?
Yeah, there's always an element that, you do want to enhance yourself. You want to show the best version of yourself in an interview. So it's okay to try and showcase a bit more of that. Hey, I'm amazing. Please hire me. I would love to be here. But as Tegan said, if you are honest, if you are prepared and you go in confident, you will have a much better success rate. So I know that we're about to go to the Q&A panel with our apprentices and graduates, and I really recommend...
Sorry, I just muted that. Be careful, guys. You can go on, carry on.
Not to worry. As we say, we're about to go to this panel with our very own apprentices and graduates. They've been through an experience, they've had an interview. So feel free to continue these questions and ask them on the panel. But I'm conscious of time, so We'll wrap up the session for now. But a massive thank you for all of the questions, and we'll get to hear from apprentices and graduates now.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thanks, Oriane. That was a really nice pace and great inclusion from everyone. Great questions, guys. So we've got a little break now till 15:15, and we'll see you back at 2:15 until 3 o'clock. Then we're going to wrap up. So apprentice and graduate panel, think of your questions and see you in 15 minutes. Thanks, Oriane.